Thank you, Representative. Before we have Dave introduce our first speaker, I'd like to just give you a bit of an overview on what we have planned for today. We are going to begin with State Senator Doug Mastriano, and then we have a great panel on reining in the big bad wolf, which, Dave, I think is going to be one of the most lively panels of the Leadership Conference.
Very timely.
Kellyanne Pigeon from Armed and Feminine will be here a little later. We're also going to have State Senator Kristen Phillips-Hill and State Representative Don Kiefer. Corey DeAngelis from the Reason Foundation is going to be here to kick off a segment we're going to be doing on school choice, followed by a panel that will be moderated by Otto Banks from the Reach Alliance. We're also going to be talking about combating environmental extremism with Rebecca Euler from the National Federation of Independent Business moderating that. Josh Nolf from the Citizens Alliance of Pennsylvania will be here with a compelling video on the new Entrepreneur Protection Program. And one segment I'm particularly looking forward to, we have our good friend John Gizzi. And John Gizzi has been, I think, at probably more leadership conferences than anybody since the very beginning back in 1989. He currently writes and works for Newsmax. John will be joining us to do a segment with Dr. Paul Kengor from the Center for Vision and Values at Grove City College. Actually, it's now the Institute for Faith and Freedom. They've rebranded. John and Paul are going to do a segment on the state of the conservative movement, and we're also going to hear from Congressman Dan Muser. And a program note, tomorrow morning, the Pennsylvania Leadership Conference resumes at 7 a.m., and we will have Jeff Coleman and former U.S. Senator Rick Santorum kicking off with what would normally be our breakfast segment if we actually had people here. And we have an exciting agenda throughout the entire morning, ending up with a lunchtime presentation, at which point State Republican Party Chairman Lawrence Tabus will be joined by a panel including Rose Tennant, Jeffrey Lord, Bernie Comfort, and Vernon Robinson talking about keeping Pennsylvania red in the upcoming November election. So we have 2 days of exciting programming here for you and hope that you will tune in for most of that. And with that, David, if you'd like to say a few words about our first speaker.
Well, yes, thank you, Loman. I want to welcome to the podium now our kickoff speaker, retired U.S. Army Colonel, distinguished military author, lecturer at the U.S. Army War College, and now a first-term lawmaker from Franklin County, our friend, State Senator Doug Mastriano.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here with you. Thanks for putting the event on. It's the most critical time in our nation's history. I don't think in modern times we have a more perilous election we're walking into. Our founding fathers promised us and said rightly that we're given certain inalienable rights. And the thing that Joe Biden couldn't say, what these rights are given by our Creator, by God, the right to life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness. And in these days that try our souls here, never before have Pennsylvanians been so much under the gun and have their freedoms been so under threat and at risk and suspended by a governor who's overreached with tyrannical powers. And anytime he gets a rebuff from the General Assembly or the courts, he comes out with a petulant tantrum, pushing back, never conceding that he's overstepped. But we are heartened and blessed by Judge Stickman's ruling in the Western District. A federal judge ruled that the governor has violated your First and 14th constitutional rights and freedoms. And with the appeal of the governor for a stay, he wants to maintain those powers. Of course, Judge Stickman gave a ruling that pushed back on the governor and said it's not going to happen. These open-ended orders are rebuffed and you can't do it. And of course, the governor comes out just a few days ago, once again, with a petulant tantrum, pushing back and refusing to concede that he's overstepped and violated your freedoms. It's a strange time we live in, that's for sure. And I'm sure most of you saw my 29th episode of Where is Wolf, where I go to the Capitol and started doing this about 6 months ago to see if he's there and what's going on in his office, and the door is always locked solidly. I'm sure there's all sorts of cobwebs and what have you behind the door. Latest episode 29, was just a couple days ago, and he's still not there. I sure hope he's okay. We have those occasional press conferences where he makes appearing, kind of like Elvis, and then he's given fixed, easy softball questions that are just a little bit harder than what's your favorite color, and he can't even answer them coherently. And I was sad to see it was the same just a couple days ago when he had his short press conference, and he was asked about what the judge ruled, and of course the governor is attacking the legislator and the judge as being irresponsible, and he says the legislator, he says we dither, and that we fearmonger. And it's funny, those are terms that I've used to describe him often and frequently the past 6 months. I'm glad he's trolling me, and maybe I'll learn something, but the key thing is the governor needs to get to work, irregardless of his party and his partisanship. He needs to get on board and get in the saddle, get to work, because he doesn't go, the rest of his staff don't go. And I don't want to hear this nonsense about working from home, because how's that going for us, Pennsylvania? How about that, your unemployment claims? Are they answered quickly, steadfastly? You're getting what you need as a result of the governor's overreach and his powerful edicts? You know, it's a bit comical. One of his first appearances was a few months ago, and he showed up in Philadelphia after all the troubles there, and came out with a sunburn on his head. And some people ask me, is that a Pennsylvania sunburn or elsewhere? I just wondering. Glad he's okay. Glad we have an appearance occasionally with Puxatawny Phil. That's nice. But he needs to get in the saddle. And the pushing back and blaming others for his failings and shortcomings, it's really heartbreaking that we have a governor elected by the people, and he refuses to work with the General Assembly elected by the people. I'm the voice of the 33rd District, and he has not engaged us in any dialogue whatsoever. And in fact, anytime we pass legislation to make the state more user-friendly and better for the people in line with science and CDC guidelines, the governor comes back, pushes back, vetoes, and then installs his own edicts that are in line with the laws that we passed that he vetoed, but he has unilateral power. At times when I hear the press conference there, I do hear lots of dithering, lots of confusion. And at times I sit there and I feel like Charlie Brown listening to the teachers talk. It's like, wah, 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 what did he just say? And then when he comes out and says, hey, I'm not an attorney, I'm like, okay, then stop talking there. Do us all a favor, because if you don't know what you're talking about, don't spread any more falsehoods or manipulate us with more deceit and control. But this whole thing here has demonstrated the left's view of America, and Pennsylvania specifically, underneath the Wolf administration. It's not based on science. It's based on control of your life. Just 3 weeks ago, we had the governor come out in a public area saying anyone who's in a public area needs to wear a mask. Well, he's standing there in a public area without a mask, and I'm like, what about you? Why don't you lead by example? That's one of the great traits of any leader, that you lead from the front by example, and you indeed do what you say. And we look about the other things, the confusion and doubt that's come across from the governor's edicts here. I mean, it's just been a crazy time. You know, God have mercy on your soul if you have a drink without some food after 10 p.m. You're dead. You're dead. According to the governor, you're going to die. The virus is after you. It's going to get you. And but if you put a plate of nachos or something on the side there, some kind of dish approved by Secretary Levine, obviously has no clue what's going on, magically the virus will leave you alone. But the governor worked a deal with COVID, and I'm glad he did this, because now you can have a drink after up till 11 o'clock. That's fantastic. And as long as you have food with it, you're okay. You won't be dead. That is interesting. And the irony of it all, and the inconsistency and hypocrisy of it all doesn't go past us here. We get it. We're in like day 200 of the siege of Pennsylvania. Governor, it's time just to get off our backs and out of our wallets. We're Americans, and these hard-fought-for freedoms here came at a great price, a price that clearly you don't understand. And I will remind you, in 1776, we got rid of the king, so although you may think you're the king of the Susquehanna, you're not. You can't be. We don't consent, because guess what? You get your power from the consent of the people. And we no longer consent. It's time that you get in the saddle and back off of these unconstitutional edicts. And that was a great ruling from Judge Stickman. He said that you have violated our constitutional freedoms, treaded upon our freedoms and rights, especially our right to assembly. You know, it's kind of ironic when you blessed Dauphin County back in June with your grace and mercy to allow it to open up to 25 people outside right here in the Capitol. And then the next day, lo and behold, I see you protesting with thousands. It's like, wait a second, you're being very irresponsible. Where was your social distancing? You're going to harm people's lives and maybe kill them by those actions, Governor Wolf. And then when the media gave you that softball, you know, hey, those are inconsistent. You know, you had that little sheepish look on your face, Governor Wolf, and yeah, maybe it appeared inconsistent. Oh, no kidding. Yes, it was. Something in the military we learned, 30 years active duty, retired as a colonel, is there's two sorts of power that are given to leaders to lead and rule, and lead their organizations, and in your case, to lead our state. And one of them is moral authority, that you lead by example, that you don't go cross with your own words. And second is statutory authority. And guess what, Governor Wolf? You lost both. You lost your statutory authority under the judgment from Judge Stickman. And I know you'll never concede, sadly. I wish you'd man up and just say, you know what? Yeah, we did overstep and walk as free people, Pennsylvania. But sadly, alas, you won't do that. And on the other side, your moral authority, of course, is rolled back when you demanded people in Dauphin County not to gather in groups of more than 25 back in June. And there you are with cast of thousands with a Blue Lives Murder sign behind your head. How disgusting was that? And did you renounce that? Of course you didn't, because your politics are against law enforcement, and rather advancing a political agenda that's so anti-America, that's so hurtful to people like you and me out there. And with that sign behind your head, Blue Lives Murder, there was a plainclothes police officer protecting you. The irony, oh, the irony. I wonder what that officer was thinking at the time. Strange times indeed. You know, it's funny, you have the media on your side, and we had Philly Mag say, we did research, and nobody who was at the protests in Philly, tens of thousands of people, spread COVID. But God have mercy on your soul if you're a working class, middle class family and you go to the beach. You better self-quarantine, because otherwise you're going to bring death and destruction with you. It's like, what, really? And you better be careful at church. Oh no, you could protest together and loot together, but you can't go to church together. That's a dangerous thing there. It's a strange time indeed. But here in Pennsylvania, we understand our roots and the commitment and sacrifice of so many. It's one of the most patriotic states in the nation, with a population of almost 7% who put the uniform on. We get it. And many of us have put our lives on the lines for these freedoms here. And we say, no, you cannot tread upon them. And the ruling by Judge Stickman just a couple days ago affirms that you cannot, Governor Wolf, enforce your restrictions on limitations to gather. And I took a hard look at this as a co-equal member of this government, this constitutional republic. We're not a democracy, Governor Wolf. You keep on saying it, constitutional republic. And I know that it's a little confusing for you. I'll help you out there. But this constitutional republic, we have the right to assemble. And you can't strip that away from us. And that means everywhere, even bars and restaurants. Yes, even bars and restaurants. Because you think about this. Let's go back to 1775. I know you slept through that portion of the class since you missed a lot there. But on 10 November 1775, my own friend, Representative Frank Ryan, will tell you in a minute here, the Marine Corps is found in a tavern, Ton Tavern. So these restrictions are gathered. You can gather wherever you want, and nobody can ask you, are you here to talk about politics? That's none of your business. I'm an American. So you can gather in restaurants, bars, bowling alleys, rinks. This is America. And guess what? The science is against you. I know you hate to hear this here, but when you came out with your edicts and your failed Secretary of Health, who needs to resign in shame, and the data keeps on stacking up that your failed secretary has killed more people than you claim you saved. 68% of the deaths in Pennsylvania are as a result of the failed policies of your administration, Governor Wolf. But guess what? 1819 March, when Levine came out with that ridiculous edict saying that long-term care facilities had to take back COVID-positive patients because, you know what, we can't run out of bed space in the hospitals. There was never a danger of that, by the way. So it was kind of completely ill-advised. And then realized that Levine made a huge mistake by taking the sick and dropping with the vulnerable. Whenever was there a time in history when any society, whether medieval or today, took the sick and dropped them in the vulnerable? You know, if you had leprosy in the Old and New Testament days, you're off in a separate colony. But Levine, in sheer ignorance and the grossest kind of medical malpractice, sent the sick amongst the most vulnerable. And 90% of the deaths in my own county, Franklin County, are a result of that failed policy. But Levine found out that was a bad idea and didn't come out, too focused on keeping us safe, calm, and at home. And instead of giving us the facts, Levine got the word that there was a catastrophe in these homes. And instead of coming out like a decent human being and saying, hey, you know what, Pennsylvania, we got a problem here. There's a bad policy, we implement it. And if you have loved ones in these homes, get them out if you can. Get them out of there. And don't know how long it's going to be. It might be a big sacrifice, but please safeguard them. Levine never did that. And instead, Levine knew the danger, and like a snake slithering through the grass, went in and rescued Levine's own mom and plopped Secretary's mom in a hotel suite just down the road from us here. And it visits mom anytime Levine wants to, has contact, and has 24/7 care apparently. But meanwhile, what about the rest of you? When's the last time you've had physical contact with your loved ones? How hard is it to get to these homes? And all these restrictions that Levine has dropped on top of these long-term health care facilities, nursing homes, have just been a big catastrophe for everything going on in there. And instead of investigating the cause of all this, our Attorney General Shapiro thinks it's better to investigate those who receive these orders rather than the one giving. Levine needs to be investigated, and since Attorney General Shapiro is such a political hack, and instead of investigating Levine and the Wolf administration, we've asked Attorney General Barr to step in and President Trump to step in. This is time that someone from the outside does a job that our Attorney General is incapable and unable to do, and even unwilling to do so. But we move on here, and we see that the struggle that we have is indeed for the heart and soul of the nation. So many lives have been lost over the generations here to safeguard our freedoms, and they've been handed to us at great cost and sacrifice. You think about the Second World War. Men from Pennsylvania assaulting the beaches of Omaha with German machine guns layering down at them. It was a deadly, dangerous place. Let's think about the Chosin Reservoir in Korea and those who fought in the jungles and mountains of Vietnam. and the Cold Warriors standing vigilantly against the Soviet idea of government. This government based on atheism, secularism, and founded on the control of the people. Myself, as a young man, as an exchange student to Germany, West Germany in the day, was detained in East Berlin at Friedrichstrasse for merely taking a picture. This is the sort of government that Governor Wolf and Levine obviously advocate. We see the oppression and fear-mongering. When Governor Wolf came out with his unconstitutional edicts on facial coverings, he claimed to use science and math, but even his beloved Dr. Fauci couldn't keep that mask on his face. He came out there and threw that beautiful pitch at the Nationals game. It was terrible. Even I could throw better than that. And had the mask on 60 feet away, but when he's in his stands, all skinny, squished in with his buddies, all three of them had their masks down. We see the hypocrisy. This is like elitism going on in our country. No rules for the leaders, but then the minions, the rest of us, we get the crumbs and whatever the boss says. And I say, no, you can't do that. But I'm driving down 81. Governor Wolf, you come out with these ridiculous non-scientific edicts because it's all about control and not about people's safety. When you leave your house, put your mask on. Why would I do that if there's nobody near me? The science for the mask, if you're a masker, is somebody 6 feet of you. And when I'm driving up 81 coming to work here in the Capitol and I see somebody next to me passing me with a mask on their face, I'm like tempted to start beeping the horn, roll down the window and say, hey, you're okay, it's your own air, it's too late, you already had the virus if you have it. You're okay. And who'd want to smell their own breath all day anyway? I mean, give me a break, Scotty. Beam me up. There's no sign of intelligent life here. It just defies reason and logic. It's a crazy time that we live in here. But what do? We have to reassert our freedoms and choose to walk as free people. Get those mask monitors off the front doors of the grocery stores. You walking in there and you have this 17-year-old kid, hey, sir, you need to have your mask on. I'm kind of like, I think you need one more than I do. And then here you go with their grubby hands. They've been playing with their face all day. Here you go. I'm like, I don't want to take that. You kidding me? Get some kind of surgical instrument. Say, here you go. I mean, come on. This is just out of control. And why would you wander around a store with a mask on anyway? If there's nobody near you, if you're a masker, only slip it up if somebody's 6 feet away. But Governor Wolf, I know you're controlling and leading the state with fear-mongering and dithering. We want truth and clarity, and we got that from Judge Stickman on Monday. You have to back off. We have the right to assemble wherever and whenever we choose. Simple as that. We're Americans. We're not East Germans. And your little snitch line, do your job, Levine. Levine, you failed us. You've killed more than 5,000 in our elder care facilities because of your incompetence and your failed policies. You're going to go down to Pennsylvania as the most failed, worst Secretary of Health in the history of this state. Maybe our nation. And there will be a reckoning. There will be accountability. People will get the truth. And those class action lawsuits are on the way here. And you might have a reprieve right now. And although the governor's doubling down, and Governor Wolf, you're complicit. This is your administration. And media, you need to do your job. If this is a Republican governor, I know you wouldn't be standing aside. I know you'd be looking underneath every rock. Every day you'd have an expose of the veterans that died in that Southeast Veterans Home. Every day you'd have a picture of them. One veteran I'm thinking about survived Nazi guns at Omaha Beach, survived SS Panzers at Bastogne, but only to die as a result of Levine's failed policies. And why didn't you talk about that person and all the other beautiful people who died as a result of the failed policies? Because you're complicit and you're tied in with the failed policies of the Democrats. You love the Wolf administration because you're in line with him ideologically, 80-90% of you. Why don't you just do your jobs? I wish you were as vigilant as you were with Republicans as you should be with this administration. They've given you so many good stories there. Maybe one or two of you would actually think, you know what, maybe I need to do my job and do an expose here and just give the truth. We're not looking for, soft pieces on us. We're just looking for balance, and you need to do the job. And I understand it might be hard because you love those leftist policies and you want us to be run into the ground and have our freedom snatched away, but you're not getting them. You have a lot of strong men and women across the state here we're done with it. And you might not realize it here, but you've kicked the bear, and we're rising up, and you're going to see lots of things change over here in the next couple months. But we're done. We don't consent. We don't concede. We refuse to surrender. And as the state's being run to the ground and up to 40% of our business are going to be shut down because of your failed policies, your heavy-handed use of rules and regulations, one of the worst in the nation, what are you doing in the meantime? Running around advocating for the recreational use of marijuana. I mean, what is this, high school? Really? Is that your issue? Can't you put your petty politics on hold for a couple months and get Pennsylvania reopened, restore our freedoms? But there you are in our beautiful capital, with 89 scripture references, quotes from William Penn, a beautiful Quaker, guys who love the Lord. And there you are with your lieutenant governor with a pot flag, on the door in the middle of the rotunda upstairs. I mean, what ridiculous nonsense here. And that you think that we're that dumb. We heard in 2004 from a previous governor of your party that's like, hey, just bring in gambling and property taxes will be taken care of. It'll be all good to go. Life will be sweet and fantastic. How's that going for you? And like, we're going to believe you now. You have more snake oil. Bring in recreational use. We'll have all kinds of money pouring in, and all these good things the money will be used for. Yeah, funny. And I'll say, show me the facts. Show me the money. Look at Washington State. Look at Oregon. They've experimented with this. How's it going for them? Are they models for the United States of America? Absolutely not. What about Colorado and New Mexico? Oops. Facts are stubborn things, as John Adams said. Governor Wolf, it's time for you actually to start thinking and stop playing party politics here. You're doing great destruction to the people, my people, and people across the state here, and we say no, we're done with it. And it's time to stop playing games with our lives. It's time to reopen this state here. We are Americans, and this is the place back in 1776 where it all began, where the light of liberty was lit in Philadelphia, just down the road from here. And in 8 years of combating the greatest power in the world, Americans from across Pennsylvania and the colonies rose up and pushed back the darkness and the heavy-handed rules and the edicts of a king and proclamations of a dictator and tyrant. And then in 1863, in my district, in Gettysburg, the bloodiest battle in all of North America was fought. And at great loss of life, men stood in the gap to set all men free. And then we look at 2001, that dark day on September 11th, Pennsylvania, the Keystone State, where terrorists had struck our World Trade Center, hit the Pentagon, and Flight 93 was headed for the capital region as well. And men and women on that plane, as great Americans, over Pennsylvania, where it all began, it's 1776, they rose up. And they said, let's roll. Now it's our turn to roll. This is our time. This is our generation to rise up and stand for freedoms, no longer willingly surrender our freedoms and rights over to a tyrannical governor. Governor Wolf, you are acting with the tyrannical powers of a dictator. It's time that you stand aside and remember we have a system of government with checks and balances. We're going to restore these checks and balances, and it's never going to happen again. And in these dark times, you need to listen to the rebuke you receive from the district judge that you have trampled upon our freedoms and rights. And we're here to say we're Americans, and we stand as free men and women. And in fact, Governor Wolf, we choose to walk freely. We choose to walk freely and exercise our constitutional freedoms, irregardless of what you and your failed secretary say. You've made yourselves irrelevant in this whole process here. We are Americans. These freedoms and rights have been fought for at great sacrifice across the generations and centuries. This is our time. This is our period. We say no to dictatorial powers, and we say yes to freedom. Walk as free men and women. Thank you, and God bless you all, and especially God bless Pennsylvania.